Hello, and a very warm welcome to the Gimme A Hull Yeah podcast. My name is Dom, and I am here for my very first live interview ever on the podcast with the Insiders team. How are you guys doing? Are you all right?
We are awesome.
Doing great.
Fantastic.
Doing awesome.
Fantastic. We've got a couple of comments in from your community. We've got Seven Fiend saying Yowie Wowie. We've got James Grant saying Yowie Wowie as well. That's great. Thank you guys for joining us. There's 5 people in. We'll be back after a short intro. We'll go with who should we have? We'll have Mick Foley. I'll see you guys in a second.
This is the hardcore legend, Mick Foley. Well, hello and welcome to Give Me a Hull Yeah. I hope everyone there, right there in Yorkshire, is having a nice day. Bang, bang. Have a nice day. Yeah.
All right, guys.
Fantastic.
Yeah, great. Yeah, great. In it, we've got a few that we do. When we started the podcast, I was like, let's just get a few in, just to have an intro, so we could bring that in, and people find them funny. So Mick Foley's great. I love Mick Foley. I got to actually interview him years ago for my publication. It was like a dream come true because he's like my first love in wrestling. My first character love was Mick Foley. Yeah, absolutely. So we got a lot of your community in. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Like I said, we had Seven Feet in, James Grant, Annette is in saying let me in. 7 feet again, Yowie Wowie. Joe, Jeff, Jody, look at you 3 big celebrities. Absolutely. It's an absolute pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure to have you all in. I will try and do as many comments. Like at some point, we'll go through them all. We'll stop and go through them all. But we are here to talk about you guys. So just for those interested, I became a fan of you guys, like I said, off camera, because of your Impact coverage and because of Abby's Window, because of your interviews. You've done some really cool Impact interviews and stuff like that. So guys, Jeff, Joe, and Jody as well, how did you all come together? How did the Insiders project, how was it born? Because you guys have never met in person. Am I right?
We have never met in person. And we started this little thing during COVID. Everybody was stuck inside their house. So, not many people had a lot to do. And luckily, wrestling was around. It never stopped. So we all met in another stream, which shall not be mentioned.
Okay.
But yeah, and I got to talking with Jeff, and that's we started from there. And Jeff, I'll let him continue the story because Jeff invited me on to his podcast actually.
Awesome.
Yeah, so yeah, I had a podcast at the time that I was doing solo, and was doing a lot of different topics on the podcast, everything from horror movies to sports breakdowns and everything in between. And met Joe and was like, hey, how about you come on and let's talk some wrestling. So we talked some wrestling, and we had good chemistry back and forth. It was a great conversation. And after that, we kind of said, you know what, it'd be really cool if we did a wrestling podcast, the two of us. So yeah, we did that, started kicking around some names and everything, and we're both big time NWO marks. I think I can call us marks with NWO. That's right. So I think we can say that. So we wanted to do like a play on the Outsiders. So so I said, well, what about the Insiders? And it just kind of stuck from there. And along the way, we were doing a lot of community interviews with different people that we had met through the other stream. And Jody was one of the fabulous people that we got a chance to talk to and meet. And we had her on for an interview. And her knowledge of Bray and her passion was just so infectious. So it was like, you know what? We need to do something here. We got a good opportunity here. So yeah, we talked to Jody about doing Abby's Window. And for those who don't know this, Abby's Window actually started out as a segment on our weekly podcast episode. It started out as a segment. We pre-recorded it every week with Jody, and we had a little bit of time every week where we would do Abby's window, and then it blossomed into this extraordinary thing of a weekly show, and as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love the fact you just started doing community interviews as well. That's really different. How was that? Because again, it's a great way to build a community when you're starting a podcast, just getting to know everyone, and that's fantastic.
It was different. We had some people who were, they might have been a little bit shy to come on at first because, you never really. But then it just kind of, I think when they came on, they just realized, listen, we're just part of the family, really. And they kind of eased into it, and we just would ask them questions about what they loved, and it was really all about wrestling. So they went pretty well, and we did. We got to know a lot of the people that are still really with us today. They're still around with us today. Some of them have been friends of ours since the very beginning. Some of them have gone on to do their own things. They all they branched out and did their own podcasts and stuff, which is kind of cool because it almost seems like we may have helped them into that a little bit, which is always fantastic. But yeah, it was fun. We had some ups and downs though, Jeff. We in fact on our anniversary show that we just had a show that we did for 3K. We hit 3,000 subs on our channel. So we had a show.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Jeff pulled out this, we called it our lost interview. It was probably the worst one we did. So bad. It was, go on, Jeff, tell the story. It was just,
oh man. So yeah, we had a lot of really good interviews. But then we had one that stood out that was just like, I mean, it was rough. It was rough. And it taught us a lot about vetting, people when it comes to interviews and everything like that. So we had this person on, and they said that they were a professional wrestler, and
Nice.
I'm a former professional wrestler. So that's something that's near and dear to my heart, obviously. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the training and, what the most difficult aspects of training were. And pretty quickly we figured out that this person didn't do any formal training. It was all with stuffed animals. And
Okay.
so yeah, it ended up being one of those moments where you learn as you kind of gel
Absolutely.
with your co-host. You start to pick up that, hey, are you ready to be done with this? Like we were texting back and forth like, hey, we need to wrap this up, or as we say in the wrestling business, we need to take this home. We need to take it home immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. What a learning curve for you guys. But really, thank you for sharing that, because it does happen. Things like that do happen.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that is it's a lesson for anyone who wants to do their own podcast. And we'll talk a little bit about some advice you guys might give to people in a little while. And I just want to say thank you to all of the Insiders community for joining us here. It's been great to have some of your comments. I'll keep putting them up as well as we continue to chat. I'd like to go around the room because, like Jeff said, you've got a background in wrestling. Tell me about where your passion for wrestling started. Take me back to the very first moment that wrestling happened for you. What did it for you? What kind of got you motivated? If we start with Joe, go to Jeff, and then go to Jody, which is really easy in terms of alliteration to go around everyone. Let me hear your story of how wrestling hooked you in.
Oh man, I've been going to shows and stuff since I was a young man, and everybody makes fun of me for my age, but that's okay. I'm used to it by now. But I've been going to see shows with my dad, and I often tell the story of where I actually met Andre the Giant at a very, very small show. When I was very young. I was probably 7 or 8 years old, and kind of patted me on the head with that huge hand of his. And ever since then, I've liked it since then. I didn't get to watch a lot of the stuff Jeff did because he would watch more NWA from the South. Up north where we were, you could pretty much only see WWF back then. Some of the other shows would appear on some of the other networks and stuff, but I really got into it probably when WWF had changed to WWE, and at the time of the WCW when that came along. was when I was really, really, I mean, following it constantly with my VCR, trying to tape both or one show and watch the other. And of course, then for me, when The Undertaker came about, because when I saw him, and I'll never forget that, when I first saw that moment where he came out at that Survivor Series, my jaw dropped. And I was like, what is this? And when I saw him come in, I'm like, this is absolutely fantastic. How could I not love it? I'm a big horror film fan the way it is. So a horror character that's now in wrestling, this is tremendous. And from that point on, and that led to really my like of my, enjoying of Wyndham and what Bray does, because I that's what I like. I enjoy that. Like we were talking a little bit before your show about how we came to like certain characters and the storyline and the things they create. Well, that was it. I mean, Undertaker did that for me, and it just went on from there. But yeah, that's kind of how I started and how I ended up being what I am today as far as a wrestling fan goes.
Fantastic.
Jeff?
Yeah, so for me, it's really simple. Growing up where I grew up in the South, I was very close in proximity to Jim Crockett Promotions, NWA, all of the down south promotions there. And the first major memory that I have of wrestling and where I really fell in love with it was my mom took me to the Greensboro Coliseum. And just, I mean, historic, if you know about it. And one of the first matches I got a chance to see was Ric Flair against Ricky Steamboat.
Oh man.
And that's like that match for me, going to a time limit draw. It was just phenomenal to see that as a young kid, to see Sting later on when he just, got started, to see Nikita Koloff and, and a lot of the wrestlers that we saw in Jim Crockett Promotions back then. Wow. I mean, I couldn't help but get hooked to wrestling back then. And my mom was a huge fan. So yeah, that's what got it started for me. I mean, growing up, I was a big, NWA, WCW wrestling fan. And over the years, when we got into the Attitude Era, I started watching WWF a little bit more, eventually WWE. But yeah, that first couple times going to see Ricky Steamboat and Ric Flair was just that got me sold. That got me sold. So yeah, that's my origin story with wrestling.
Amazing.
Mine's not quite the same. I'm pretty new to wrestling. Actually, the first match that I ever saw was Bray Wyatt and Matt Hardy in the Ultimate Deletion match.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah, so I didn't really get into wrestling until me and my husband started dating. He was always really into it. He's been into it since he was a kid, and he just kind of kept dragging me into it. And I'm like, I don't know. Well, and then I ended up watching it with him, and that was the first match I ever saw. And I was kind of hooked from then on. Matt and Bray have always been my favorites. And after that, Bray disappeared for a while. And, I fell in love with some other wrestlers that are fantastic in their own right. And then he came back, and, it just kind of rocked my world.
Amazing. I mean, we are going to talk about Wyndham in a little bit, but I do want to ask a couple of questions about sort of, again, insiders in terms of how you develop the content, what, in terms of Impact Wrestling and doing the stuff like that, the watch-alongs and building the community that you've done. What was your mission statement then with it when you started, just to, again, build that community? And how has that changed and developed over time?
We've gone through a lot of changes, certainly. When we first started out, again, it was all pre-recorded, and the hell that poor Jeff went through trying to get YouTube videos to download on time, which was ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, and the stuff that he had to do. We started with an award show, of all things. We did an end-of-year awards show. for the previous year that had been, and we came out and and Jeff got the presentation all ready to go and stuff, and it was nerve-wracking. That first, because we had, listen, I will say this, the stream that we met in is a popular wrestling stream, many, many more viewers than we are ever going to get, no doubt. And I'll give it its due, for what they do and for who they do it. And, again, meeting through it, yeah, I'm never going to regret doing that. So I have to say that. But we got a lot of our people who watched that stream to come over and watch ours. And a lot of them chose to stay with us, which was an honor. And the fact that, that particular person helped to kind of push our show a little bit too. So it wasn't all bad. But then we kind of branched out. We started doing those community interviews that we talked about. And then we kind of thought, well, you know what? We've seen in this stream that we met, this guy does some watch alongs and things like that. Well, why not? We can do. And then Jeff and I kind of talked about, well, we both like sports and stuff. So we talked about almost like a football, one of us will be a commentator, the other one will be play by play. And we'll just kind of maybe do it a little differently. Plus, we're, well, I am at least on the older side, so it might be a little different from the people that you normally see. And then it kind of branched off. And once we went live for the first time, which was, it was scary. I'd never been. Now, Jeff worked for a major sports company in the United States, ESPN, actually. So, he is probably more used to that. I have not been in any form of doing this since I was a DJ in college, so it's been a long time. And so to get me onto that, he kind of had to push me a little bit. Yeah, I don't know, and then it's like, oh, it's just, and then so finally we did it, and I'm like, all right, this isn't so bad. And then we started doing the live show. So, and the watch alongs, the Impact stuff, I'll let Jeff talk about that because I had not watched Impact in years.
Oh, cool.
Years. I'd gotten away from that when they started doing the 6-sided ring, and I was like, yeah, no, and I stopped. Jeff was the one who had been watching and said, Joe, and he'll tell you, you got to start watching this.
Yeah. So I mean, just to kind of go back to add in one of our taglines that we still use today is "For the fans, by the fans."
Yeah, of course, I see it there. Yeah, good.
Yeah. Because
great promo ability, guys, right there.
We love segues. That's
love segues, like pointing out the, there we go. So, but yeah, that's really what our motto has been from the start, and that means too, being able to adapt and evolve as you go along. So one of the things that we noticed was that we had some people that were big time Impact fans along with myself. And, I kept telling Joe, like, man, you got to watch Impact. You got to watch Impact. It was my favorite and still is my favorite weekly show, bar none. So, I was like, just give it a try. Give it 1 week. So he gave it a try. He was like, dude, man, this is awesome. Like, I'm sold.
Yeah.
And who is this Rosemary person? And
he had me watch the Rosemary versus Sue Young match on YouTube. And I'm like, how have I not been watching this? And Decay. And I'm like, oh my God. And I watched it one episode, and like Jeff, it's my favorite show of the week as well. I say that to everybody that watches our show, and I'm completely honest when I say it. To me now, it's no drama. You get so much drama now from AEW and WWE going back and forth. Impact is no drama, and it's great wrestling, and they do a great job with storytelling and stuff like that. I'm sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
No, yeah. So I mean that's what we did. We said, hey, let's give this a try, and we started Slammiversary. I think a couple years ago was our first pay-per-view watch along for Impact, and we have gone strong since then, and have really seen a nice uptick in people that have watched with us. We started out, we maybe had 15 people that were watching with us, and now I mean we have quite a good showing of folks that come out from the community every Thursday and watch with us and watch all of the pay-per-views. And It's honestly one of the best shows out there, one of the best kept secrets in wrestling, I say, when it comes to Impact. And I'll go ahead and say I will be in the building for Bound for Glory.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I will be there. It's actually here in Albany, October 7th. So I'll be here. But yeah, I'm just really glad that Joe gave it a try, because it honestly gave our channel something that's so unique.
Yep.
Yeah.
That people really gravitate towards.
Fantastic.
That might be the first time we meet in person, because I'm going to really try to get there as well, because I tried to go to the last one and it just didn't happen, and I had car issues going on and things like that. But I'm going to try to get to that one for sure. So that could be the first time we meet in person. So
awesome.
Yep.
Well, I'll ask Jody about your kind of, again, because you're relatively new to wrestling, your kind of role in Insiders in a second. But I just want to take a moment to plug all of our Impact Wrestling interviews, including an interview with Rosemary on the channel. So if you're interested in Impact Wrestling, as these guys are, we've got some interviews for you. And I just want to say, Impact Wrestling here in the UK and in the US have been incredibly supportive of what we do. I'm such a fan of Impact, which is, one of the things that drew me to you. So yeah, fantastic. So going back to Jody there, again, when you were invited to do this, I've seen you host Abby's Window and be a part of that. Is that something you're comfortable with? Have you got any background in this sort of stuff, or was it just the pure passion that these guys were invested in that got you here?
It's all attributed to Bray. They asked me to come on and do an interview, actually, not long after this picture was taken. It was the first time that I had ever met him. And it was right before COVID hit in January 2020. And I had written him this long letter about, 2019 was a really tough year for me. And, my mom got diagnosed with breast cancer and was going through treatment. And it was just one of those years where I never feel like I got 2 feet on the ground. Every time I got back up, something else knocked me down. And, he kind of kept me smiling through all of that. So I wrote it all out in a letter, and I could barely hand it to him. I actually could barely talk to him at all. He walked up to me, and I went into complete nurse mode and said, "Hi, my name's Jody." "Hi, my name's Jody. I'm going to be taking care of you today." And that was it. That was pretty much all I could say to him. I had mentioned a Facebook group that we had started, and he was aware of that. And he actually asked me if I want to take a picture with him, because I just wasn't going to ask. So when they asked me to come on for the interview, I knew that pretty much I was going to be talking about what it was like to meet him and what a nice person he was. And everybody just really gravitated towards it, that, I was just who I was when I met him, and was supposed to meet him at WrestleMania. And obviously then COVID happened. I ended up getting a video chat with him about 9 months after that picture was taken, and he remembered exactly who I was. Obviously, then we had started talking about, there's so much going on with him, especially during the pandemic. We need a space to talk about this on a regular basis. So that's kind of how it kind of branched off into being this own show. And, over the years, I've built this beautiful friendship with him, and we still find things to talk about, even though he hasn't been on TV for over a year. And I think that's just attributed to what a nice person he is in general. I enjoy talking about him. I enjoy theorizing. And I know that's something that he enjoys too. He's, I know that he's watched Abby's before. I know that he's a big fan of C Wrestling. So, he's aware of everything that goes on when people are talking about him. And that's one of the special things about him. I talked to him a couple days ago, actually.
Awesome. That's wonderful. I think that's a perfect segue into the Abby's Window stuff. I'm just aware Mark's got a question for you. What I'm going to do, guys, is we're going to go through the Abby's Window stuff, and then we'll do some questions for the guys at the end as well. We'll do a bunch of questions. We'll have them on the screen, and everybody can answer them one at a time. So whatever questions you have, we will get to them, your comments and stuff like that. So please do bear with us. And thank you so much for engaging with us and asking those questions and commenting. writing as well. So guys, obviously, again, Inside is now the home of Abby's Window. You're all passionate about Wyndham, and you're all passionate about the character work, as far as I can tell. When you met Jodie, that was the sort of start of the conversation for Abby's Window. What's it been like? Because I know you mentioned over email, you've had a huge community be a part of Abby's Window, see wrestling. I'm a big fan of C's work as well. There's a great community around Wyndham and the theories around the character. So what was it that drew you into Bray Wyatt, Wyndham Rotunda first? What was it that captivated you guys? I'll let you guys free for all on this one. Tell me what you love. So what was it that really got you? Do you know what I mean?
I think it was the stories. Like, he was always so good on the mic, and all of us have that love for horror, and you definitely get aspects of that when he was old cult leader Bray, but then when he came back as the Fiend, it just perpetuated that. Like, our little horror excitement was going a little crazy because we get this new fun character that we get to talk about, and it was something that I know that he created, and it came out of his brain, and being able to see the way he wants to portray things, it's just, he's got a beautiful mind. He's incredibly creative. And so that's been the side that's always kind of captivating me. Yes, he's really good in the ring, but he's a really good storyteller. You could hand him a mic and be like, go ahead, what do you want to say? And he'd kill it.
Absolutely.
I remember the promos for the original Wyatt family, seeing them.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking to myself, wow, this is really, because it kind of reminded me of a Hills Have Eyes, Texas Chainsaw vibes with the, how they were doing them out in the country. And they were always, and almost like you call him cult leader Bray. It was almost like seeing a cult type thing. And then when they came in, I thought, wow, this is going to be really interesting. Now, I knew who he was. I knew he was on NXT, but the character that he had and the whole thing with the Husky Harris stuff back then just never really went anywhere. And I'm like, eh. And then when he came back and repackaged himself, and to the point of where Jodie was talking about too, when he went away, I actually stopped watching wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I was like, you know what? I was so mad that he was gone. Because he was one of my favorite characters. That was around the time when The Undertaker was kind of almost done at that point. He was only wrestling WrestleManias every now and then, and really wasn't. So I kind of latched on to him because of, she was saying, my love of horror. I'm a big slasher fan. I love Friday the 13th. It's one of my favorite horror movies, and I love the Jason Voorhees character. So anybody that comes up with characters like that, I've pretty much gravitate to pretty easily. And then when the Dollhouse thing happened, and I saw that thing, I'm like, oh, because I honestly, at that time, and then we're getting better. We're getting, social media has come so far that you can go and look up almost anything. And I can remember looking, I checked my news every day in wrestling for his name, Bray Wyatt. And I'd be looking to see if anybody had any news about him coming back. And I didn't see anything. And all of a sudden I saw that, and I'm like, this has got to be him coming back. And then when I saw what he was doing, I'm like, this guy is going to pull off a Mr. Rogers Neighborhood that's demented. And I'm like, that is the most fantastic thing I have ever seen in my life. And then when I saw him come out with that mask, I'm like, that is absolutely phenomenal. And then I went back to, like you were saying about Mick Foley. I went back to Mick Foley and the Four Faces of Foley. And I'm like, he's taking that from Mick, where he's going to do, the nice character, he's going to do the crazy character, and he's going to do the one you can't touch, the undefeated, the unbeatable character. And I'm like, this is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And so that's where, you couldn't help but follow that. And then, like you mentioned, the people we knew, like See Wrestling and stuff like that, the theories that were made, because it just led to all of that. And I often wonder if we were doing this back at the time of The Undertaker, if we would have been doing the same thing.
Interesting.
Because it's so, it's so easy to do now. And And I'm thinking, wow, it's really crazy. And and I gotta say, before I give it to Jeff here, but him and Jody have done a phenomenal job with that show, because there's not too many people that could have pulled off doing a show about a guy who's not been wrestling in
Agreed.
over a year.
That's why I fell in love with it. I think it's amazing what you could draw out of people and how the community engages. I mean, we've got loads of people in the comments, and we will get to people, people asking you guys if he's coming back tonight on Raw.
I saw all the time.
All the time. There's so much there, and it's awesome. So much passion there, and it's great that a show can really, carry through in that way. I mean, it's helped build your channel, and it keeps people passionate. And it was great to hear, Jody, before we go to Jeff, great to hear Jody talk about the passion that Wyndham has for the theories and the fans and stuff like that.
It thrives on the fans.
Yeah.
And it's no secret, like he's told other people that he loves the fans just as much as we love him, and he thrives on that. He loves the theories and loves, it's something that he draws inspiration from at times. So, I was worried at the beginning, like, what, he's not on TV anymore. He got released. What are we going to talk about? And he just, like, who he is as a person and his character work, it makes it easy. Because there's, okay, well, if we wanted to put the Fiend in a horror movie, what would you want to do? And, I know that he loves that stuff too. So, yeah,
it's beautiful. And we'll talk more about that personal connection that you have with him shortly. Jeff, your passion for Wyndham, Bray, whatever you want to call him, how did he grab you?
Oh my goodness. It all started when I saw the first vignette back in the day, like his initial Wyatt family run on the main roster. I didn't keep up as much with with NXT and FCW at the time, but I had heard a lot about him, and the first vignette that I saw, I was hooked. Because it was, I think all three of us share this, but we all love horror movies, and it just took me back to Cape Fear, and that first vignette, that's what it took me back to, and I was like, man, this is tremendous. And then to see him on the microphone, to see his charisma, to see everything that he brought to the table as a performer, just really hooked me. And then I think beyond that, it's, we can talk about the great moments and everything else, but I think his ability to adapt and evolve as a character is something that also stuck with me, because, it's one of those things where, you would see this with The Undertaker, and you see this a lot with the greats, is that, yes, they have the thing that got them over and that worked so well. But what you really notice about the greats is that they can take little small changes and make that little small change, and it's like a completely new perspective on the character. And that's what I really love about him, is that he makes these small changes, even if it's clothing or a catchphrase or something. Just whatever it is, he makes that small change, and it's like, wow, this is a completely different outlook on the character. And when the Fiend started coming around, all bets were off. Like, at that point, I was like, okay, yeah, he's really got me hooked now, because like you throw a mask into it, this is like a horror movie.
And then you found out Jason Baker and Tom Savini made it.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, yeah, I'm done.
When he walked out with that lantern that was a head, I'll never. I'm sitting there watching that, and I'm like, is he carrying his old head? And
I remember when we did that interview with Jason, and he said they actually used his real hair.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Like, oh my gosh.
No way. That's crazy. That's so crazy. Oh man, again, great to hear about the passion points there, and lovely to hear that you've been able to speak to people like Jason, It was lovely when I got to talk to him as well. You know, it's great to hear this community and see the community here in the comments with us, people that love Bray Wyatt, people that love Insiders and your work. I do want to come back to Jody. And when you were talking about your encounters with Wyndham, there was a real emotional, I saw even from, you know, across the other side of the world and on a camera, there's an emotional connection there. You know, you can feel it because of because of what happened and because of how you kind of connected with Wyndham. How has that relationship? What's it meant to you? Even though you probably don't speak to him all the time, and what has that relationship meant to you? And I guess as an extension, the relationship with this community around Wyndham as well. What has it meant to you as the host of Abby's Window?
It touches my soul every day. If you would have told that person in that picture right there that 2.5 years later I would be able to call him a friend, I would have looked at you like you were crazy. And you know, because of him, I've grown this extended family and gotten to become friends with people like Kyle. Kyle has now done 3 tattoos for me. And you know, gotten to become friends with Jason Baker. And, you know, I was messaging him while I was watching the Black Phone going, dude, these masks are insane. And little fun fact, he messaged me back and said they were working on the mask for the Black Phone the same time that they were doing the Burn Fiend costume. And he said, I don't think I slept for 2 months.
Oh, no way.
I just watched that today, actually. And Jason actually tweeted us too recently. Because I posted those 2 pictures of the Burn Fiend to go off to what Jody said. And he gave us even more information about that, saying how the jacket, which he didn't get to wear, the 86 that he called it because they didn't let him wear it, was a tribute to Brody. Everything on that jacket, from the inseam of the plaid to he had his birth and death dates written on the back of the jacket. So the whole jacket was a tribute to Brody Lee, which was cool. And because again, you know, Jason Baker, why would he have to tweet to us? Right. Yeah, you know what I mean? So it's like, but he did, and that's cool. Yeah. Yeah,
Jason's a cool dude. So yeah, just really building that extra family. And you know, at where this picture was taken, that was the first time that I got to meet Jeff in person too. And you know, getting to experience hanging out with Wyndham together. It was the first time that I'd seen Wyndham in person since when I met him before the pandemic, and just being able to run up to him and be like, hey, stranger, and you know, gives me this big old hug and told me he was so glad that I was there. And then I got reamed on the phone by him not long after that. He was doing a meet and greet in New Jersey, and one of my really good friends, Brittany, we have matching tattoos. She was going to that meet and greet and was at that meet and greet. I was in Ohio at a Caleb Johnson concert, and she called me that morning and she said, hey, Bray wants to talk to you, and handed him the phone. And he was like, where are you? And, you know, he was like, why are you not here? I miss you. I thought for sure you'd be here. And I was like, I'm in Ohio at a Caleb Johnson concert. And, you know, he was not too excited about that. And I said, I'm sorry, I got these tickets before I knew you were doing a meet and greet. Fine, I'll forgive you this time. So, you know, just being able to build that friendship with him and be able to, you know, I've sent him messages about, you know, a promo that I was watching and just like, man, I really miss this. And, you know, I know how much he misses being in wrestling. I know he misses the fans. And, you know, that comment that he made that, you know, when I said he was my superhero and he saved my life, he replied and said, and you guys saved mine. So, you know, and
that's beautiful.
He is every bit of honest and humble and sweet person you'll ever meet. Like, he is a big teddy bear, and whatever he seems like, that's how he is. Like, he's just a big teddy bear. And you know, he's got beautiful kids, he's engaged, he's about to get married, you know, he's living his best life right now, but I think he's just waiting on the right opportunity to give him what he wants.
Absolutely, absolutely, and we're all excited to see him return. I am going to get to the comments and some questions that you guys have for the Insiders team. I have a couple more to ask that center more around you guys. There was an interesting point that Jeff and Joe made, particularly about learning from interviews and kind of adapting and stuff. And I want to go around and talk to each of you about how you've changed and developed. What have you learned about yourselves through doing this podcast and through live entertainment, and hosting and things like that? Obviously, Jeff, you've got a certain level of experience. Joe, you had none when you came in here. Jody, same. You've all got different experiences coming in. So what did you learn about yourself? What have you learned about yourself rather since you started this podcast? Compared to where you are now.
It's funny because I had my daughter who's just going off to college. She's 18 years old. I was at her graduation party, and she brings me over and introduces me to most of the friends that she had there were guys. It's just like, okay. She brings me over to this group of guys, and she's like, "Dad, they wanted to meet you," and I'm like, "Why?" And they're like, "Well, they all watch your podcast because they're all big wrestling fans." So, I mean, what do you say? I walked over and I'm like, "Hey guys," you're like, and they're all. I'm like, "Oh, you watch the show?" And I'm like, "Well, thanks. We, appreciate that." And then I'm like, I'm gonna break the ice and just ask them about certain wrestlers and just get them into conversations, and that's what I did. And these are all 18-year-old kids, and I'm like, so it was kind of a surreal moment. It was a little crazy. But you do get that every now and then. Like you'll get people, even people I work with. And I've been in management. I've been a retail manager for 34 years. And people that I work with will come in and be like, "Oh, I see you're doing a show. That's really cool." So, but as far as learning things, yeah, I mean, I used to DJ, and even recently, but 10 years ago or so, I would go and do weddings every now and then for family members and this and that. But it's very different. When you're in front of just that kind of smaller crowd in a wedding, it's not even, you're really not even thinking about it. But when you're doing a video, and I think it really opened my eyes when we did a show that might have been a wrestling. I'd have to go back and check, but we did a watch along for a show, and I'm looking at the chat like you are looking at yours now, and all of a sudden I see 200, 300. 400. I'm like, oh my God. And I'm trying to read them and they're just going down the screen. I'm like, I can't read them anymore. I can't even catch up. And then it dawned on me and I'm like, wow, that's amazing. I never thought. And when we hit our first 1,000 people, I'm like, never in a million years did I think we were going to get 1,000 people subbing to our channel. Never in a million years did I think. And then I saw a video that hit 20K. Like, an NBA basketball stadium watched our video. It blew my mind. But, and how we've changed, we always look to improve things. In fact, I just texted Jeff earlier today because we do a weekly show every Sunday, which we called our wrestling wrap-up show. And I was like, I never really liked that name. It was always kind of weird. I just kind of stumbled on it. And I told him, I said, I don't like saying it. There's too many W's. So I'm like, I don't know. We might not want to change that one up. So Jeff's like, we got it. We'll do something else for it and take care. So we're always evolving and we're always changing. But for me personally, I'm just humbled by it all because I really just never imagined. And for us to come from where we did, where like Jeff was saying, we were getting 4 or 5 people to, getting 1,000 or 2,000 or even 10,000 people watching during a big event is pretty amazing. The fact that they're choosing us when there are countless amounts of people who do it. It's humbling. And so I know that was it for me. And that's really where I've changed over the years.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, Joe. Jeff, your thoughts? Because again, you come from a very different background.
Yeah. So I think for me, I'm so used to doing the behind the scenes stuff. That's been my role, no matter what I've done. And that was my role, coming from where I came from in media. So, for me, it was really a opportunity to challenge myself. I mean, personally, you know, I was a kid that grew up with a severe stutter and went through speech therapy and all of these different things, and never did I ever think, you know, yeah, I'm gonna be a co-host on a show that is in front of thousands of people, or you know, however many people, and we're gonna be live and talking about wrestling. I never thought about that, but to have the opportunity to kind of come out of my comfort zone and to be, you know, talking and speaking and not just kind of hiding behind the scenes stuff has been really cool. And you know, one of the things that Joe kind of talked about this a little bit, but one of the things that was the most humbling for me was being at the meet and greet there here in Albany, and having people, because I had on my insider's shirt, say, "I've seen you before. I've seen your show before." Having Johnny Swinger say,
Yep.
"Hey, I've heard you guys are the ones that do the watch alongs for Impact Wrestling." And, you know, to have different people notice you like that is kind of surreal. And it's, you know, I think about it, it's like, really, you
Yep.
watch us, you know. But it's cool, and it's an awesome thing, and you know, it's very humbling. But yeah, it's been a really fun ride, to see where we came from, you know, to see some of the early videos that I will admit I try not to watch now, because they make me cringe a little bit, because it's like, oh, you know, I missed this edit, or I did this and I should have done that. Um, to see where we've evolved from has been really cool to see. And you know, one of the things that I'll always cherish about this is the group of people that it's allowed me to connect with. Um, and you know, I don't take that lightly. The people that, and I'm not just talking about Joe and Jody and Tazzy and Brandy and C Wrestling. I'm not just talking about that group of people. I'm talking about all the people that watch. You know, the people that DM me, or you know, tag us on something on you know, on social,
Yeah.
that we can interact with. That whole thing, I mean, having a community, like we really have an awesome community. It's really like a family, and I'm blessed to have the amount of connections that we've been able to gain.
I love that. I love that, man. And again, thank you. Thanks to your community for joining us today as well. It's a beautiful thing, guys. Jody, yourself, how have you? Because again, you've taken a passion for a character, and you know, turned it into a presenting gig where you can be a part of this podcast, and obviously, you know, build this community around yourself and around Abby's Window. How have you changed and developed since you started to where you are now?
I work in healthcare. I'm in an executive leadership position, so I run a hospital, and it's a nice break from having to be that
Yes.
formal, authoritative kind of figure, and to just have fun. I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is just to be comfortable with myself. I know at first I probably cared a little bit more about what I look like, and now I just don't. I mean, I do to an extent, but I know that all these people will love me whether I'm sitting here in pajamas like I am now, or, you know, if I got my extensions in and my hair's down and I got my makeup all done. So they're going to love me no matter what. And the most humbling moment for me was in Albany as well, when, you know, Jeff and I were hanging out, and we had all these people from the community that came here to meet Bray as well and knew who we were. I got to meet a lot of, you know, names, put faces to names that I've talked to so frequently. But the most humbling experience was when I got up there to talk to Wyndham. I made a joke and I said, "When you coming on my show, Brat?" And he just looked at me and he goes, "You're talking about Abby's, right?" And I just said, "Yeah, you know." And so that's the second time he's rendered me speechless, because the first time I met him, I had mentioned a Facebook group and he knew what I was talking about. So, but for him to go, "Oh, you're talking about Abby's, right?" And, you know, to have someone like that know who you are and give you the time of day on a regular basis it's pretty humbling. And, like I said, he's agreed to an extent. I'm just waiting on timing. That's what he said. So
Fingers crossed.
I've gotten a yes, but that's
Okay.
where that is. So
Okay.
I have full confidence that at some point he will be on Abby's. I just don't know when that is.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm so excited to see that. Can't wait to see that happen when it does. I'm sure that'll be internet breaking, because you don't see many Wyndham interviews out there. So, and I would love to see you host it, to be fair, Jody. All you guys, to be fair, I think that'd be wonderful. Again, that emotional connection and that passion for the character really comes across. Before we move on to the comments from the community, and we'll go through some, I have one question then. So you've never met in person. Well, you've met in person now because of the meet and greets and stuff. But would you like? This is where I'm going to start some heat potentially. Would you guys class yourself as friends? Are you friends now, or do you secretly, like, as soon as you go off camera, you're like, this is horrible?
Oh no! Like,
do we go that? Oh, that
no.
person. No.
Me and Jeff text each other pretty much on a daily basis. So
yeah.
Same with me and Joe. Like, it's funny because honestly, with me and Joe, I feel like sometimes we text each other in show jargon.
Yes.
Because like we'll find something on social media and be like, dude, did you see this? And then, dude, did you see that? And then, but then, you can tell the friendship because there are other topics that we all talk about. Like Joe and I, we talk about movies, we talk about TV, we talk about different things. But the coolest thing ever is that these two, along with Tazzy, along with others, they reach out and they say, how's your child? And they call them by name. Like the fact that they know, like, we know each other's families, and we care like that. That shows the type of the bond that's there. So it is beyond.
My kids ask about these guys.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah. I mean,
Mommy, can we talk to Joe and Jeff?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's beyond the however much time we're on camera. It's beyond that. So that makes it pretty special.
Yeah, I can remember a couple of Christmas Eves ago, my father had passed. It was just a stunning thing because he passed pretty quickly. He got COVID, and he had been getting treatment for cancer. So it wasn't, but it was just the way it happened, how I had talked to him the previous day, and seemed like it was perfectly okay. And then I heard about it Christmas Eve morning, and it was a shocker. And I wasn't really all that close to my dad, but still, when it happened, and then I could just remember just kind of sitting watching some mindless something or other on TV. And I remember mentioning it to Jeff, and and he mentioned it to some other people, and then I started getting messages. People rolling in. Of course, Jody Jeff messaged me a few times, saying prayers for my family and for me. Other things like that too, just the little things Jeff's already done like a birthday thing for me on the show, which was, I try not to call attention to that because, according to See Wrestling, I'm 345 years old. So, we don't want to push that, but I try not to call attention to that, but he actually
down instead.
Yeah.
That's what my husband does. He just starts counting backwards.
He actually did that a couple of times, and has done that and put together this little. And again, this was when before we were doing live stuff. So Jeff put this video together and had all the people that we were interacting with back then, who were some different people than we do today, and just had them put little pieces of clips together, kind of wishing me a happy birthday on the video. So it's definitely gone beyond just a working relationship, no doubt.
Yeah. And I have a good relationship with Joe, obviously, but there's something special between Jeff and I. Like, we work in the same area. Mm-hmm. A lot of struggles that we have as a family, we can relate to each other on that a lot. He's got kids, I've got kids, and we come from similar backgrounds as far as marriage and relationships go. And I could text him at 2:00 in the morning and say, hey, I just had a nightmare. I need to talk about it. And he'll text me back right away. Like there's just that real special bond that I've built with him in particular, and he's like family to me.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Except for 2 times a year. And that's when the Buccaneers and the Carolina Panthers play.
Yeah.
Other than that, we're solid. We're rock solid.
Even then, I still love you.
I think that's beautiful. That's why I asked that question, because again, it's so cool that you guys can, only see each other a couple of times and build a whole community, without seeing each other face to face. I think it's a wonderful testament to what can be achieved, with a project like this. So I think that's fantastic. I'll ask a couple of questions at the end, but I think it's only fair because we've had loads of engagement in the chat. So we'll go through some comments now for you guys. Mark's got a question for you. Hey, Joe and Jeff, I have a question about your younger wrestling days. And then we go down. You had mentioned that you watched WWF up north, and Jeff, you had mentioned that you'd watched NWA down south. I'm not. Is that a question mark? I might have missed that. John has one, which is an obvious one. A lot of people have been asking in the chat. How about you guys in the chat? Do you think he's returning? He being Wyndham, I'm assuming it must be. Is returning tonight on Raw.
This is a question we get on our Twitter page almost daily, if not hourly, and I'm sure Jody gets it more. Listen,
I think I get it more because I'm friends with him. I think people assume that he's gonna spoil everything for me, and I hate to tell you guys this, but he doesn't. He has so much respect for people's genuine reaction that he's given me little things here and there, but he would never overtly come out and say, hey, you might want to watch Raw.
Yeah, okay.
You see such a little thing like Karrion Kross on his Instagram put out and I think it was a fan thing, to be honest, but he put out, it was the song Sweet Dreams Are Made of These, which was playing in the background. And then he had a picture, and I shared it on our Twitter. And of course, everybody saw that, and they're sharing it with us, and people are going crazy. They're like, well, why did Karrion Kross put this out? And it has him and Scarlett and Drew and Roman, but it also has Wyndham, and everybody's thinking, well, does that mean he's getting involved? And it's crazy because it probably was just something a fan did that he threw up there. Now, Karrion has already said he'd want to wrestle Bray. He said he would love to be in a match with him. But things like that come out now almost daily. And that's what helps us with Abby's as well, because if he puts a tweet out, oh my gosh, the internet explodes.
Something like you can't. It's amazing that people still have that passion for him. Over a year later, and I know he appreciates that too, but I don't know. I would say now that Triple H is in charge that I have more confidence that he'll come back to WWE. I think what makes sense to me, knowing him, he probably would want to show up on a random Raw, because at every pay-per-view, people are going to be expecting it.
Yeah.
And so if he comes out at Clash at the Castle or whatever pay-per-view comes up next after that, people are going to be expecting it because it's a big venue. And I think sometimes he likes to swerve people and do the unexpected. So I could see him just showing up somewhere on a random Raw to really get the fans to go.
Yeah.
So that means, to answer his question,
maybe
you better watch Raw every week.
Better watch Raw, absolutely. So I did get down to Mark's question. I do apologize, I didn't scroll down enough, Mark. The question is, when you guys were younger, so this is for Joe and Jeff, was there a neutral part of the country that all territories overlapped?
Probably a better question for Jeff. He would know the territories thing a little bit better, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people would overlap in like St. Louis, Chicago, more Midwest. But in terms of like growing up, WWF would come down south. From time to time. It was just where I grew up. It was just such heavy WCW, NWA country. Jim Crockett Promotions, was right there in Charlotte, North Carolina, and that's where the home offices were. So it's like, we didn't have a choice. I mean, in the part of the country that I grew up in, wrestling NASCAR, that kind of stuff. I mean, you got inundated with it. So
Like
yeah,
us living in Indiana now.
yeah.
Turn a corner without talking about IndyCar racing, which I
Yeah.
love, but
Yeah, so I mean, there was overlap, but and I did get to see a few WWF shows back in the day. One of the coolest things though is seeing wrestling shows at like high school gyms.
Hmm.
That's something that happened back then that I got to see a lot of cool big name stars back in the day by just at the high school gym.
Yep.
Not a huge.
That show that we went to in Albany that night with Matt and Jeff Hardy wrestling, like I loved that.
Yeah.
It was just this tiny little ring, and all the fans are lined up at the entrances, and Matt and Jeff are coming down and slapping hands with everybody. It was just awesome,
And Jody, that's where Bound for Glory for Impact is going to be.
Same place.
Yeah, same place.
I might have to take another trip out there.
There you go.
Shows like that were very intimate. That's the kind of show that I saw Andre. To the fact that he could even wrestle in one of those little rings that they had there, and then I Jimmy Superfly Snuka trying to go off the top rope in one of those, and the ropes broke, and it was like but those small little intimate places, and the closest I would have gotten to see where they would overlap was Philadelphia. Because Philadelphia was a huge bastion of wrestling back then, and you'd see the NWA shows and the WWF shows getting both together in Philadelphia, and then as you go forward, where ECW came out, you'd have ECW originating from Philly, so they always kind of crossed over there.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to hear about that sort of history and the connection you guys have. Like, because for me, like, I grew up on. I started with WCW, but I never had any access to going to shows. I went to one show. There's an infamous story about WWE coming to my town. They've only ever been twice, once for a bigger show and once for an NXT, because we're not like a major city in Hull, East Yorkshire. But there's an infamous story of The Undertaker going.
It's a pretty city, though.
Going to a casino. What?
It's a pretty city, though.
Oh, thank you. That's lovely of you to say. It's a lot of people don't know it, but we're very. I love being here, and it also made it very easy when we needed to come up with a wrestling podcast name. We could just change Hell to Hull, and it was fine. But again, great to hear about the sort of stories from the territories and stuff like that. I think that passion, again, from you guys really comes through, and thank you for sharing those stories with us as well.
Sure.
I was born and raised in Leicester, so.
Oh no way! Of course. Oh yeah, I read that you were British born, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool. So it makes me want to ask, like, how did you find it? Like, when was it when you were younger you moved?
The company that my dad worked for wanted to expand on a global level and opened up an office in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is why I'm a Carolina Panthers fan. Okay. So we moved to the U.S. when I was 9, and my parents actually just moved back to England in October of last year.
Oh, no way. That's really cool.
So I'm coming over there in May.
Oh, well, look, you know what? I'll come see you. Like,
I got to meet up with see wrestling. I got to see this thing again.
Absolutely. We'll do something. I'll show you Yorkshire. You brought that. That's where I am. So, and very few people. Because I used to work in Boston, so I used to live in Dorchester in Massachusetts, and people didn't know where Hull was, because there's a Hull in Massachusetts, but people didn't know there was one in the UK. So I'll happily show you around Yorkshire. All of you guys. Dan, who is our Raw host, he wants me to show you the Fiend artwork he did for me. I'm gonna have to. So this is gonna be a whole thing. So you guys entertain yourselves for a second while I.
No problem. Hello, Dan. How are you?
You know what I just realized? That Bray meet and greet in Toledo is the same time as the World Cup.
Oh, wow.
Oh, damn.
Thank you for hosting for a second.
Sure.
There you go. So Dan did this for me.
Look at that.
Oh, that is awesome.
It's really cool, isn't it? It's really cool. I actually have on my. This is gonna be really awkward, but I actually have a Funhouse picture there that, that our moderator Jack did for me as well. So
that's awesome.
And I've got like Funko stuff behind me. Sorry, I just knocked the mic there. Very professional. So let me just scroll down and see if we've got any more questions. Wait, Bray Wyatt's coming back. Words? We hope so. We can only hope.
All I can tell you with any certainty is I've been told soon. That's all I know.
Fantastic. I can vouch.
Soon could mean a year from now. I mean,
could be.
You have no frame of reference.
Yeah, and that's why it's so exciting, you know. Hanzo Hal says, I can vouch he plays the abomination or monster on TV, but in real life, such a cool man, a beautiful soul. Lovely to sort of see that as well. Okay, timing is everything, says James. It'll be perfect then when we see him. Yeah, absolutely. Again, lots of really good positive stuff for the Fiend, and so much love, which is, you know, great to see that. Any more questions?
This is my favorite piece of Fiend art.
Oh yeah, awesome. Oh wow, that is beautiful. That's stunning.
Done by my good buddy Scott Dorsey. So Dorsey Art, if you're familiar with him, if you're not, go get familiar with him. Because he's one of Bray's good friends as well, and he is. I talk to him almost every day. He's such a good artist. I've got 7 of his pieces in my house. So
that is beautiful. That's some beautiful stuff.
Again, this one.
Oh wow, yeah.
He sent that to me as a present, just because he's awesome.
That is awesome. Absolutely. We've got a question from Hanzo. Jody, when you're back home, maybe we could do a live Appy's window from the UK. Me, you, and Jeff. That would be dope.
Hell yeah.
I want to be in on that. I would actually love to. So again, we have talked a little bit about this, but how, for all of you guys, Clash of the Castle's the next big pay-per-view. Let's do it on a scale of 1 to 10. You don't have to say any more than that. On a scale of 1 to 10, what's the likelihood of Wyndham returning at Clash of the Castle?
I would probably say, especially because I kind of try to think about it a little more like a mathematical, almost like a promoter in a way. So because of the fact that you know you're getting Roman and Drew, but you don't have a match for Cross, I start to wonder to myself, well, maybe it could be something where he could come back and have a match with Cross, which everybody would. I mean, could you imagine the 2 entrances you'd get between Cross with Scarlett and then him coming out? It would blow people's minds. So I kind of wonder about that, whether, you know, that wouldn't be a bad idea. Plus the atmosphere and the way they're building that up with the whole castle theme, and they have, you know, they had the big demon eye up in the air and the poster, and it's like, you know, you'd kind of think that would be a pretty good thing. So I'd say like a 7. I'd say a 7 for that.
Okay. Jeff, your thoughts?
I'm gonna say an 8.
Okay. Wow.
Just because I really want to rile people up, so I want to just to get people thinking about it. But in all seriousness, though, like, it would be so awesome to see him return in that type of setting. Like, it almost lends itself to that type of return.
Yep.
Yeah.
Especially depending on the set and, you know, what you could shoot beforehand, and, you know, do some cool little vignettes that you could show throughout the show. Like, don't show any vignettes until Clash at the Castle. Show maybe 1 or 2 vignettes and really get people talking during the show, and then bring them out near the end. That would be the way I would go about it.
Yeah, that sounds cool. Jody?
I'm going to go against the grain a little bit. I actually think it's less likely that he would show up at Clash of the Castle, just because, you know, and Jeff can attest to this, he's a big dude.
Mm-hmm.
He has very distinctive tattoos. He's not going to be an easy person to hide through an airport.
That's true. Yeah.
Like,
that's a good point.
You know, as opposed to something in the U.S. where he can drive. And then, you know, I just think going on an international flight, he's going to have to, you can't fake a name.
Yeah.
And you know, somebody that works at the airport that is going to see him and be like, yo,
yeah,
Wyndham Rotunda just got on this flight to England. Like,
Yeah.
you might want it. So
Yeah.
that's the only reason that I say it might be a little bit less likely, unless he plans on taking a private jet and not going in the public eye. I just think he's too hard to hide.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Interesting point for sure. So you're less likely. So you're definitely yeah.
I'd probably give it a 2 or 3, just merely for the fact that he's not an easy person to hide.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple of beats is talking about Karrion Kross. Obviously, you mentioned it earlier. Like the potential of that. Do you think that's a good first feud for Wyndham? I feel like they because I think there was a rumor they were supposed to work together for a period of time before Karrion got released. I think Karrion had pitched for them to work together. So would that be a good feud for you guys?
I don't know, because I was thinking about this a little bit earlier today, actually, when I saw that post that he put out. But the thing would be is who loses, because, Karrion obviously is being built up into the main event program. You could see that. So you doubt he's going to take a loss. Do you want to bring him back and have him take a loss?
Yeah.
Like you were saying, I'd probably be almost a better idea that they did work together. And then maybe if Karrion won at some point, then they could have them turn on one another. But it'd probably be a better idea to have them work together, because I don't know who you'd want to take the loss in that point. And would the fans enjoy it if either one of them lost?
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. So Marvin has the question, if he does return, who should his first feud be? So guys, in an ideal world, who do you put Wyndham against?
Edge.
Okay, cool.
Finn Balor.
Any reason, Finn Balor?
Yeah, Finn Balor.
Finn Balor would be interesting, because you can continue that from before and going,
There's
he talks about life being a circle all the time.
There you go.
There's some loose ends there for sure.
And nobody ever got to see him and the Demon. So what better way to bring the Demon out to fight him almost as a measure of revenge from him, basically squashing Finn when they met last. So,
Again, who do you have lose that match if you have the Fiend versus the Demon?
Well, hopefully the person won't trip off the top rope
exactly.
Like the last time we saw the Demon. And I kind of think that wouldn't happen now that someo's gone from there. But
I don't know about his first feud, but I think the one I'd look forward to the most would be him and Roman.
Oh yeah, that makes so much sense for me to do.
He owes him. Yeah,
they have so much history. Like the Wyatt family and the Shield have so much history. Like, could you see Seth get back involved with Roman to help him defeat Bray Wyatt?
Ooh, so many possibilities. So many possibilities. Like I say, a lot of talk in the chat about Clash of the Castle. First big show in the UK for 30 years. Something big could happen. We've had a lot of thoughts on the grades for whether it shows up.
I think something big will happen. I'm just not totally confident that big thing is Bray.
Yeah, absolutely. I would want Bray versus Kross at WrestleMania 39 in Hollywood. Interesting, James. Absolutely. Bray's first feud should be Riddle. I guess that would work with the Randy Orton.
Maybe Bray brings back Randy Orton by fighting with Riddle.
That's interesting. Riddle had a little interaction with the puppets. I remember back.
Yeah, absolutely. So
that's what we all want. We want Puppet Watch again, right? So that wrestling can really annoy his neighbors.
Absolutely, yeah. I do enjoy a good bit of Puppet Watch from C Wrestling. I like one of my favorites, and obviously a great part of your community. Thank you guys for putting your grades in the comments as well. It's fantastic to sort of see you guys engage with what we're talking about in terms of Clash of the Castle, the potential of Bray Wyatt returning at Clash. Just a couple of sort of quick fire questions then to round out. And if anybody's got any more questions for these guys before we finish up, then please do feel free to ask them, and then I'll let you guys go. I realize I originally said 45 minutes, somewhere an hour, so I appreciate
it. Generally happens to us too. We're like, oh crap.
Yeah, I really appreciate. I would love to go through everybody's comments as well. I do apologize, I haven't got through everybody's, but we have seen them. We do have a question from David Bowie, that's Anthony, who hates Bray Wyatt and who made that horrible. If anybody wants to go and have a laugh, Anthony, who is David Bowie, riding a tiger on a unicorn, pranked me at SummerSlam and pretended by playing the Funhouse music that Bray Wyatt had returned. So let's all have some hate towards Anthony. No, I'm kidding. But he has a good question. Do you think if Bray returns, they will continue the relationship between Bray and Alexa?
They certainly can if they want to. I think they're going in a different direction, though, with Alexa now, especially because she came without the Lily doll for the first time last week. So I think they're kind of moving forward. But, I mean, if they ever did do a program with Cross, well, he'd need a partner. You have Scarlett there, so you've got to have somebody that could maybe possibly take her out. So maybe as kind of a one-off, if they ever decided to do that.
They never really shut that door.
Yep. She could go back, but that would be the only way I'd see it, at least at this point, because we still don't really know how Bray's going to come back either. Whether he's going to come back as the Fiend at all, or whether he comes back as some different thing altogether. But yeah, it's possible. It could happen.
I'm feeling something new.
Absolutely. Well, that's what Hanzo says. Does he come back as the original Fiend under Triple H and have that support for the gimmick and the creative freedom, or do we see Wyatt 6 because there's been some trademarks pushed for Wyatt 6? I believe.
To see a new character with him carrying a lantern of the Fiend's head.
That's cool.
Wow. Damn.
Jason Baker can do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great show. Thank you for joining us, Christopher. Appreciate it. Jeff, my first wrestling show was the old NWA in HS Gym in Cornet. Midnight, Dustin Rhodes was there. G-Town, I guess, is that South Carolina,
South
Ryan?
Carolina, Georgetown, South Carolina. That's right.
There you go.
Awesome.
Like I say, I think Ryan's from the same area you are. Ryan's a big part of our community as well. Thank you all for joining us. A couple of quick fire questions then. One wrestling related and one going back to you guys before we wind up. Quick fire. Favorite wrestler, favorite match of all time, and favorite pay-per-view of all time. If we start with Joe, go to Jeff and go to Jody. Favorite wrestler, favorite match, favorite pay-per-view, and you guys answer in the comments, of course, as well.
Wow, favorite wrestler of all time. We can go back and forth on this. We just did a list of this not too long ago. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna go with Rowdy Roddy Piper as my favorite wrestler of all time. Favorite match and pay-per-view are both one and the same. WrestleMania 3 and Undertaker versus Hulk Hogan. Because, I mean, listen, it was just iconic to see, Andre the Giant. And again, I remember this because back then we couldn't watch pay-per-views. You had to pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars to get a little adapter to put on your TV.
Like you have to watch all the NFL games now.
Right. So now we had to wait to get them in a video store. So we waited months to see this. And when we finally got those tapes, I remember bringing them home, and me and a couple of my friends are sitting there watching it, and it was like, oh, my God. But for those two icons to wrestle and to see Andre lose and get slammed on top of it was unbelievable. Unbelievable. So there you go.
Okay. Jeff?
Favorite wrestler, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Mm-hmm.
That's my guy. Like, no hesitation. That's my guy. Favorite match. Oh my gosh, that's such a tough question. Obviously it's a Ricky Steamboat match. I'm gonna say him and Flair, the very first match that I saw. At the Greensboro Coliseum. Favorite pay-per-view of all time, just because of this isn't because of the wrestling or anything like that. It's the historical significance. Bash at the Beach, Hulk Hogan turning, being the third member of the New World Order.
Yeah.
And revealing to be that third member of that group, and it changed wrestling forever. So yeah, those are my picks for those questions.
Absolutely. Thank you. Jody, your thoughts?
Favorite wrestler of all time, since I'm new, I'm gonna have to go with Bray. Even if I wasn't new, I'd probably still go with Bray. Favorite match of all time, I think the strap match that he had with Daniel Bryan is severely underrated.
Yeah, me too.
I watched that match recently, actually, and that was one of the times that I messaged him and I went, fuck, this stuff was good. Like, seriously. Like it was, I think that match is severely underrated and it's one of his best. You know, I would have to say the WrestleMania during the pandemic, you know, when they had that theatrical Firefly Funhouse match.
Oh yeah.
That would have to be my favorite pay-per-view because
Boneyard match too.
yeah, the
Boneyard match, yeah.
Like it was unprecedented in terms of they had to go in a new direction. They had to find something different. And Bray was so good during the pandemic and was monumental for carrying WWE during the pandemic. And obviously, you know, I have a soft spot for when he won the title too.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's one of my favorite reactions. But him coming back as that burned fiend look is also one of my favorite reactions that we've had on the channel because we were all just sitting there going,
Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, I've got another quick fire question for you guys to finish up. Again, if you guys have any last questions for the guys, for the Insiders team, please feel free to stick them in the comments. We'll try and get to them. Thank you for putting your matches, your favorite wrestlers in there as well. So you mentioned when we started out that you have potentially inspired other people to start their own shows. So it got me thinking, what would be your key tips? One thing that you would advise anybody who wants to start their own show to do, and one thing you would advise them to avoid doing if they were going to start their own YouTube channel, start their own show. What would your key tips be for anybody watching you guys who are inspired by what you do on what to do, but also what not to do?
First off, make it your own. Take a part of yourself and make it your own. There's so many people out there that it's hard to be noticed on YouTube. But the other thing to that also is to just have fun and stay positive. That's one of the things we preach on our channel. We really do, and I'm pretty proud of that fact. Is that watch what you enjoy and do what you enjoy and do what makes you happy. And I like to end the show every week with that. But yeah, if you're gonna get started in whatever you're gonna podcast about, I mean, have it be something you enjoy and something you like, and most of all, just have fun. Just have fun, because that's really what it is. You know, it doesn't matter. You know, we didn't think going into this about having 3,000 people that watch. We didn't think about getting 20K videos. And when it happened, it was astonishing. You know, so we went into this just knowing that we'd have a good time doing it. So that would be my advice.
Okay. Jeff, your advice?
My advice would be to don't be afraid to fail. Failure doesn't mean that it's over. It just means that whatever you've tried didn't work that time, and it's okay to try something different. That would be, you know, the positive news. You know, just try. If you never try, you never know if it'll work or not. What not to do? Don't allow others to kind of co-opt what it is that you're trying to do. Like Joe said, make it your own, you know, and stand on that. Don't be afraid to kind of stand out and be unique. But don't try to, you know, and don't try to be like other people. Bring it for yourself. Like, do your own thing, and that takes you a long way. It really does.
Yeah, absolutely. So that kind of, again, that passion and drive that you guys have, you know, to do something unique, which is, again, what brought me to you guys. Jody, your thoughts? What would you, again, tips and advice? What to do? What not to do?
What to do for sure? Just be yourself, because those who matter won't mind, and those who mind don't matter. Just be true to who you are. What not to do? Leave the pettiness at the door and don't treat things like a competition.
Yeah.
You know, wrestling YouTube is not a competition. It doesn't have to be a competition. Everybody can talk about the same things that they enjoy just as much as the next person. I don't take anything personally. And, you know, great example is me and C Wrestling. Like, he's one of my best friends. We talk about the same topic, but we're not in competition with each other. We enjoy each other's, you know, theories, and we talk on the phone all the time, but it's not a competition between me and him. And that's important, I think, when you're building a community, is not to get caught up in that drama. And
Absolutely.
Don't compete with other people. Just focus on you and be yourself.
Do your own thing. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like
treat it like a competition. That's on them. But
yeah,
into it.
It's hard to do, but yeah, I think that's a really good one. I try and live by that, and it is great to see how you've been able to collaborate, not only with each other but also other YouTubers and build that community. That seems to be the key word of the chat today. So before we do the press and plugging bit of what you guys have coming up and what you want to promote, we have one last Bray related question. I think we've talked about it a little bit. Could you see Bray returning Clash of the Castle and telling Roman, let me in? I think we've all kind of decided, well, I think Roman would be the preferable return. I don't know, maybe that is just me, but I think Roman would be the preferable return feud for me personally.
Yeah.
Would make the most sense. Yeah, especially where they left off.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, things coming
well,
forward.
I can see Seth going after Roman now. Seth has made some interesting comments recently.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling that Seth might interrupt in that Drew McIntyre match.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that'd be really good too. Seth, obviously, a lot of history with Bray, but doing very well for himself. Michael, who's a part of our community, haven't seen the inside in a while. How are you guys doing?
Hey, Michael, how are you?
Go. Michael, Michael joined us too a little while ago, and he's a very valued part of our community.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. And again, everybody kind of
pumpkins in your picture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody's ready for fall.
Indeed. Yeah, thank you guys all so much for joining and asking your questions. Thank you so much for spending time with us. Obviously, Alexander is a Firefly as well. That's what we were here to talk about. So
that's why I have it tattooed on my arm.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you for joining us. If you are watching this back, do get to know the insiders, and thank you so much for spending time with us. It's been lovely talking about Wyndham, but also talking about you guys, because again, I became a fan of you guys a long time ago, and it's great to sit with you. And I look forward to more collaborations with you guys. I would love to.
Absolutely, anytime. You're welcome on our show anytime. You can stop by and join Jody and Jeff for Abby's one day.
I would love to. I would absolutely love to. Michael's is fall is his favorite season.
Mine too.
Let me in. Yeah, absolutely. So on that note, guys, the plugging bit. What would you like to promote? Where would you like to send people? What do you want to say as we finish up?
Well, obviously, we are on all forms of social media. So we're at Insiders PW on Twitter. We have a Facebook group that we have that not that many people really using Facebook anymore, but we do have a Facebook group. We're on Instagram as well. It's all under Insiders PW, and our YouTube page, of course. As far as what we do, coming up next, we've got our Impact show on Thursday night, which we do every single Thursday. That's 7:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the watch along for that. We watch the whole show, and then afterwards we go away for about 15 minutes, come back, and we do a show we called After the Impact, which we basically just chat about what we saw on the show. And sometimes we use that as a prediction show if we have an upcoming pay-per-view by then. And then this Sunday, we will have our weekly wrap-up show, which is probably going to change its name eventually somewhere down the road. That one, we have fun with that. That's kind of where Jeff and I started with the whole podcast thing. That's pretty much just, we talk about what happened or what's going on in the news with wrestling. We do a thing called the airing of grievances on that show, which when, we have a little thing we want to get off our chest, we have a place to do it. We do a segment called Sell or No Sell, which is a debate segment basically between us and the chat. We also do Book a Wrestler. We have a comedy section at the end with a good friend of ours, Jessie Callan, who comes on and she'll give a whole bunch of jokes where, we also have a heckler. See Wrestling is the heckler. So yeah, it's kind of like the Muppets with Waldorf and Statler up in the balcony. So that is on Sunday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And we have those shows every single week. And then, of course, Abby's returns next Monday at 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So
Fantastic.
There you go.
Fantastic. Yeah, Jeff and Jody, anything else you want to add to that?
Jeff has a podcast besides ours, I know. He could probably tell you about too.
Please do, mate. Please do.
Yeah. So it's a horror movie podcast called Movies to Be Murdered By. We're on all the podcasting platforms, so iTunes, Google Podcast, all of that. We have taken a bit of a break, but we'll be back soon. So in the meantime, go and check out some old episodes.
Fantastic. Jody, anything you want to add to finish off?
I love everybody.
There you go. Well, that I mean, what better way to finish? Absolutely. So, guys, thank you so much. I'll catch you a little bit after our intro to kind of wind down, because it's or outro rather. It's been a pleasure, and I want to talk about some collaborations with you guys anyway. So, guys, those that have been with us the whole time, thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for your comments, and thank you for your time. And thank you for supporting the insiders, and thank you for supporting Gimme A Hull Yeah. What we do, guys, if you've not watched any of our videos, because I came up with a really cringeworthy outro so I could figure out which cameo to end on, because it takes me ages to figure that out. I count down from 5, and then we all do Hull Yeah with jazz hands. So it's Hull Yeah, as in hell yeah. All right. Sure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to count us down from 5, and then wherever you are in the world, all you got to do is say Hull Yeah. That's HULL. Sounds a bit like hell, with some jazz hands, while I figure out which outro we're going to put on. So yeah, ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hull Yeah!
God, I just listened to this Hull Yeah podcast. It was terrible. I feel like my ears are gonna bleed.
What'd you say? This is Darby Allen, and you're listening to Gimme A Hull Yeah podcast.